Hello everybody and welcome to the last part of this series on preparing and giving a talk. What a journey this has been. When I started making this set of videos, I never thought it would take this long, and I never thought I could be so thorough about preparing a presentation. But it's all good as long as it helps somebody out there in terms of improving your presentation skills. So I thought I would bring this series to some kind of closure and give you my thoughts on actually going through the process from start to finish of preparing my presentation. I guess let me start off with a little bit of a spoiler. Right away I will tell you that the presentation I gave went very well, and I got the little feedback form with me here, and I've scored really high on this feedback form. There is one caveat that I will talk about, but nonetheless, they even decided to nominate me for some kind of award for giving a good presentation. Not like it matters at all, but I guess it's just to reassure you that there is just a little bit of validity in some of the things I talked about in previous two parts. It's up to you whether or not you take these advices to heart or not and apply it to your talks. That really comes down to your style of presentation. But anyway, moving on. First of all, let's talk about some things that I thought went fairly well during my talk. To start off with, I think I set a pretty good stage for my audience to understand my topic. And a lot of that comes down to creating that sense of flow in your presentation. If you know fairly well where you're starting off from and you know what message you want your audience to take away from your talk, then really the task of preparing a good presentation is just a matter of throwing a few slides together and reading enough material to convince your audience that you know something about your subject. The second part is something important and something I haven't touched on in the previous two parts, but it's retaining eye contact with your audience throughout your talk. And I gotta tell you, I'm not super good at doing that. I tend to look at my slides a lot, and I think it comes down to really practicing, for me at least. Once I practice my talk enough times and I internally feel confident that I know what comes up on my slides when I press that clicker button, then I can do a lot better at maintaining that eye contact with the audience. For me personally, I think I switch between looking at one particular person in the audience, and they probably feel pretty awkward about it. So to avoid that awkwardness, I generally pick somebody who I know fairly well and who sits in the center of the audience, so that it seems that I'm kind of overlooking the whole audience while I'm doing that. And the second thing is really for me is to look at the back wall behind the audience, kind of at the level where people are sitting, which gives an impression that I'm overlooking the audience while also avoiding any awkward eye contacts, which might not only feel awkward, but they might also throw you off track from what you're trying to say while going through your talk. The third thing kind of goes along with the eye contact, but it's paying attention to your audience. So seeing, looking for facial expressions of people understanding or getting confused about something that you talked about. And at the end of my talk, when I gave it, I actually saw that on one of the last slides that I was presenting, people in the audience were looking completely lost. And you know, I did my best going through the slide as it was, but I guess you never know. It's hard to tell where your audience got lost. Maybe I forgot to say something, some keyword to make it click in the right place, whatever it is. But essentially, once I saw that happening, what I did is completely scratch the template in my own head under which I was giving my talk and kind of go over the slide that I was giving. And doing this actually bit me in the ass at the end of my talk, because I ended up going 1 minute over time. And the department takes the time limit of these presentations very seriously, and I got docked some, I guess, points for not staying within the range of appropriate time. But, you know, it doesn't matter. I decided to make that call to make sure the audience I'm presenting to really takes away something from my talk, instead of doing it solely to get some kind of credit for giving that presentation. Doing this is entirely up to you. I mean, it's hard to say whether or not one way is better than the other. It depends a lot on your personality and the setting at which you're giving your presentation. And remember, I mean, unfortunately, no matter how hard you try and how well thought out your talk is, chances are that at some point a few people in the audience are going to get lost anyway. It might not even be your fault. They might just be daydreaming, or it might be so far from what they're interested in that they don't really care that much. So, you know, you gotta weigh your options. Now, the fourth point, I guess, is again going along with trying to prepare the presentation in a way that is thorough and that your audience can understand. One really important thing to keep in mind is this concept, I guess, that is the curse of knowledge. Okay, so the curse of knowledge is something I was introduced to in this little preparation course to give seminars that is given at the University of Calgary. And I think it's a really powerful and very useful idea to understand when you're preparing your presentation. Essentially, the curse of knowledge refers to a situation where you, as a presenter, as somebody who knows a lot about the topic, cannot get into the shoes of your audience very easily. Essentially, it comes down to you thinking that the ideas that you base your talk on, or you base your particular slide on, is so simple that you don't even consider that somebody in the audience might not know the background to understand your slide. And it's very, very difficult to fix this, because once we learned something and we really got it nice and well organized in our head, it is very, very difficult to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who doesn't know the concept yet. It's something that I think every single person who presents a talk struggles with and probably forgets a lot of the time, but it's something that is so, so important to keep in mind when you're preparing your talk. Remember, the curse of knowledge is a thing, and it will screw you over no matter how hard you try to avoid it. Point number 5, I guess, regarding the things that went pretty well, is the question period. And essentially my approach to answering questions is, first of all, once you're asked the question, just restate the question back to the person that asked it, and this serves a dual purpose. One of them is, I guess that's even triple purpose. Anyway, one of them is you're confirming that you understood the question correctly from the person who asked it. Second of all is you are letting the whole audience know what the question is, because oftentimes when somebody asks a question, they will not ask it loud enough for everybody in the room to catch what they're saying. So once you restate that question, make sure that everybody in the audience can hear your question. That way you won't get that question again. And also, when you get to answering that question, people will actually understand what you're talking about. And the third thing is, it gives you more time to think about the answer in case the question is tricky or difficult. Now, moving on to the things that I think I could improve on for future presentations. One of the things that I got comments from the judges on was the use of visual aids, and while they really liked my animations, everybody was really pleased to see the effort in those. One little caveat that I got suggested as an improvement is to increasing the size of my figures. And if you watched my part 2 video on how to give a presentation, where I went over my actual PowerPoint that I was presenting during the talk, you saw that I emphasized maximizing the size of your figures a lot in that video. And I thought, honestly, that my figures are huge, but apparently, you know, it's never enough. So super important, you know, anytime you throw in a figure in your PowerPoint presentation, make sure it is as big as it possibly can be without looking like complete shit due to poor resolution of PDFs. Another thing, as I said, was the fact that I went 1 minute over time. I got kind of mixed reviews based on this. Some people were willing to let that slip, kind of brush it under the rug, because overall my presentation was very good, based on their words. But I think nonetheless, it's really important to stay on time. And you know, I'm totally willing to take those docked marks for going over time, because I think it's one of the most disrespectful things to do to your audience, is to go over time in a talk. And unfortunately, it happens way too often when we see presentations. So that's something I really want to make sure I improve on, and give myself enough playroom when I prepare my talk, in order to account for any potential times where I might screw up, or again, I notice that somebody in my audience is not following what I'm saying, so I decide to go back and reiterate a point or two. So, you know, stay on time. I think it's really, really important. And the last thing I could improve on was setting things into context. And this really, I think, comes from practice of giving presentations. I thought that I was building my talk with enough context and detail in it in order to paint a big picture. But I guess some of the judges maybe felt like still that could have been improved. I wasn't docked any marks on it. I just got a comment that the context and the bigger picture could have been improved. So, you know, try your best for yourself to think how your talk fits in with the bigger picture of the topic that you're presenting on, and try to at least mention here and there, make some connections to that big picture idea that you're presenting on. It's hard to say because I'm not even sure how to go about doing that myself yet. As I said, I think it's going to come down to just giving more talks and seeing the audience response and hearing some of the feedback to get a feel for how much is enough. Because you never want to make your talk so general that everybody in the audience just goes, duh, we already know this. But you also don't want to isolate your topic to the point where people don't really know how it fits in with the field as a whole. So you gotta find that fine line somehow. So I think this concludes, finally, the second episode of the Grad School Chronicles, the 3-part series of trying to improve the presentation skills of anybody of you viewers out there. Thank you so much for sticking around. Please let me know how you felt those videos were. If you watched the whole thing, I genuinely thank you so much, and I hope that you found something useful in these videos. And I think I will stick for the next little bit to more relaxed context, where I don't have to preach and teach and blab about serious stuff regarding grad school, such as giving presentations. So, you know, stick around, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, give it a thumbs down if you think I didn't do as well as I could, or you felt like some of the information was misleading or not well presented, whatever it is. So please feel free to express your opinions about this whole thing in the comment section. Otherwise, I will see you in a week or so with more content relating to the graduate student experience. See you then.